They mocked the station cleaner, then he saved everyone from a reactor disaster. Mark was just another worker on the massive space station Orbitus 9, a giant hub floating above the planet's surface. Many people walked past him every day, not noticing the small man pushing a mop or fixing a leaking pipe. He was a single dad, raising his young daughter Lila alone, and most of the station staff thought he was nothing more than a simple cleaner. Every morning, Mark arrived before sunrise. His worn boots echoing softly through the empty corridors, he pushed his cleaning cart quietly, humming a soft tune that only Lila knew. The walls of the station were cold and metallic, filled with blinking lights and humming machinery, but Mark had learned every nook and corner, every vent and pipe. He knew where problems could hide before anyone else. Lila often came with him when the station daycare was full, sitting quietly on a stool, drawing little spaceships and robots on scraps of paper, her small fingers moving fast. She had inherited her father's sharp eyes, always noticing things others missed. She watched her father carefully, learning from him in silence. Though she was only 7 years old, the station was alive with energy. Engineers ran from one control room to another. Scientists checked monitors filled with flashing numbers, and security officers patrolled the hallways. Yet Mark moved like a ghost, unnoticed and underestimated. He fixed minor leaks, wiped the floors, replaced faulty bulbs, all while observing. A bigger picture, he saw patterns in the chaos that others ignored. Today felt different, though. A quiet tension hung in the air. Alarms had not sounded yet, but the hum of the machinery seemed sharper. The lights flickered briefly in one corridor, and Mark noticed it immediately. He stopped mid-step, knelt by a maintenance panel, and traced a small line of condensation along a vent. It was nothing to the others, just a small drip, but Mark's eyes narrowed. He had seen tiny signs like this before. They often led to bigger problems. Meanwhile, other workers passed him, nodding absent-mindedly, calling out greetings he barely noticed. They had no idea who he really was. They didn't know that under his simple uniform and cap, he carried knowledge and skills that could rival the best engineers on the station. But he never boasted. He had left that life behind to focus on Lila, to give her a safe childhood, away from the endless pressures of high-ranking positions. Mark's routine continued, wiping a floor, checking a vent, adjusting a loose pipe, all with calm precision. His eyes constantly scanning, his mind working faster than the people running around him. Then Lila tugged at his sleeve, pointing to a small crack in the panel he had just examined. "Daddy, look, it's leaking again," she said softly. Mark smiled, kneeling to her level. "Good eyes, Lila. That's why we always watch carefully," he said, before returning to the panel, his hands moving with skill, opening the cover and examining the tiny crack. It was small, but dangerous. It could worsen under the station's pressure. He knew it. He decided to note it down in his log, quietly, knowing that the engineers would dismiss it if he mentioned it. He had learned long ago that people underestimated him, underestimated the single dad cleaner. He didn't mind. He preferred to solve problems before anyone noticed. And he was good at it. The station's daily operations continued, but the flicker of lights and subtle hums started to grow. Mark noticed a small temperature spike on the nearby reactor monitor. No alarm had sounded yet, but he felt a prickle of concern. He adjusted his cleaning route, moving closer to the control room, pretending to mop the floor, but his eyes never left the monitor. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the station. Red lights flashing, the engineers rushed in panic, shouting numbers and codes. Mark stayed calm, calmly moving toward the reactor's monitoring panel, observing the chaos. Nobody paid attention to him, yet he already knew the problem. He had seen the signs before. His instincts never failed. Leela clutched his leg, her small hand tight. "Daddy, are they okay?" she asked, voice trembling. Mark smiled reassuringly. "They will be, Lila. Just stay close," he said, Placing a hand on her shoulder, his calmness steadying her fear, the engineers argued over what to do. Some were too afraid to take action. Some blamed each other. The station was alive with tension, alarms blaring, red lights reflecting off metallic walls, and still Mark moved quietly, inspecting panels, noticing pressure differences. Observing small sparks of static that no one else saw, it was clear to him what could happen next. The small crack he noticed in the vent could grow fast, leading to a dangerous chain reaction in the reactor system, but nobody else seemed to understand. The urgency. They were busy panicking, waiting for someone to lead. Mark knelt by the reactor panel. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to himself, "Time to do what I do best," he thought, already planning the moves that could save the station. Save everyone on board, and maybe even show them that the quiet cleaner, the single dad they ignored, could be the hero they never expected. The camera of the station's security system would have captured him then, small figure amidst chaos. Calm, focused, moving with purpose, while the rest of the station buzzed in fear. A silent tension built up. The first true test of Mark's hidden skill was about to begin, and no one yet knew that this day, the day they ignored him, would become the day the single dad cleaner proved that heroes could come in the quietest forms. Mark's eyes never left the small crack in the reactor vent. The subtle drip of condensation seemed harmless to everyone else. But he knew better. His experience had taught him that the smallest problem could grow into disaster in seconds. Station was enormous, with layers of corridors, hidden panels, and powerful machinery. A single mistake could trigger chaos. The engineers were still arguing in the control room, shouting codes, pointing fingers, and pressing buttons. None of them noticing the tiny anomaly Mark had spotted. He sighed quietly, adjusting his cleaning gloves, and moved closer to the reactor panel, pretending to check the floor, but in reality, he was observing pressure gauges, voltage readings, and temperature fluctuations, each one telling him a story that no one else seemed to read. Layla clutched his hand, her small fingers trembling. "Daddy, why are they all scared?" she whispered, her voice soft and nervous. Mark knelt down beside her, whispering, "Because they don't see what I see, Lila. They don't notice the signs like we do," he said calmly, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "But that's okay. We'll fix it," he added, already calculating the sequence of actions needed to prevent disaster. He reached for a small maintenance scanner tucked in his belt, a device engineers rarely used for small checks. But Mark had modified it himself, allowing him to detect subtle stress in metal and pressure changes in pipes. The scanner beeped softly, detecting anomalies in the vent crack. Pressure levels rising faster than normal. The drip was growing into a slow trickle. Mark straightened, his mind racing, knowing time was slipping away. He approached one of the senior engineers, a tall man with sharp eyes. "I need you to check the vent on the reactor. It's critical," he said, keeping his tone calm but firm. The engineer laughed, waving him off. "Relax, Mark. It's just a small leak. The reactor has multiple fail-safes. No one needs to panic." Mark's eyes narrowed. A flicker of frustration crossed his face, but he didn't argue. He knew persuasion would not work. People underestimated him too much. Instead, he decided to act quietly, his plan forming in seconds. He would fix the problem himself if needed. He moved toward the maintenance hatch, crouching low, scanning the floor for obstacles. Sparks flickered from a nearby panel. The hum of the reactor grew louder, and the temperature on the display climbed steadily. Alarms hadn't started yet, but he could feel the tension in the air. The station itself seemed to shiver under the pressure. Mark opened the hatch and entered the vent system, crawling through narrow tunnels, his flashlight cutting through the dark, metallic walls. The smell of hot metal and oil filled his senses. Layla peeked from the hatch behind him, her eyes wide with awe and fear. The vent crack was worse than he thought, tiny fractures branching like spiderwebs along the metal. Small sparks flickered inside, pressure readings spiked on his scanner, and the drip had turned into a steady stream. Mark's mind worked at lightning speed, calculating which valves to adjust, which pipes to reinforce, and how to stabilize the reactor before the engineers even realized the severity. Back in the control room, the alarms finally began to sound, red lights flashing urgently. Engineers rushed from station to station, shouting numbers and codes. Panic spreading like wildfire, someone pointed at Mark's cleaning cart, confused why he was near the reactor. "Isn't he just a cleaner?" One engineer shouted. Mark ignored them, moving methodically, his hands steady, his focus absolute. He connected the scanner to a hidden access panel. Reading the data directly from the reactor's core, the pressure was climbing dangerously. Only seconds away from triggering a meltdown, his heart raced, but his face remained calm. Every movement precise, Lila whispered from behind him. "Daddy, it's scary." Mark smiled without looking back. "Stay calm, Lila. Everything is under control," he said, though he knew control was fragile. Like holding water in your hands. One wrong move and disaster could strike. He worked quickly, closing a small valve, tightening a loose joint, redirecting energy flow. Through a secondary pipe, each action deliberate and perfectly timed, a sudden spark shock from a nearby panel. And Mark ducked instinctively, metal groaning under pressure, the sound echoing through the vent. He realized that the crack was growing faster than expected. Someone had overlooked a critical insulation joint. If it failed, it could send the reactor into a chain reaction. Mark's mind raced. He could feel sweat dripping down his back, yet his movements were calm and precise. He activated a small cooling module he had installed secretly during routine maintenance. Directing cold coolant directly at the weakened vent, the temperature readings began to stabilize slightly, but he knew it wasn't enough. The station was counting on him. Above, in the control room, engineers began noticing the changes. The pressure spike was slowing. "What is happening?" "The system is stabilizing," one engineer exclaimed, looking at Mark, disbelief crossing his face. Mark continued, knowing they still didn't understand what had nearly gone wrong. "It's the vent," he muttered to himself, adjusting the cooling module, tightening support brackets, rerouting airflow. Every action performed in seconds, almost instinctively. Lila watched him, amazed. "Daddy, you're like a hero," she whispered, a small smile breaking her fear. Mark's lips twitched into a small grin, but he kept working. The crisis was not over yet. The vent crack had slowed, but other minor fissures were forming along the surrounding pipes. He noted each one, mentally preparing the sequence of moves he would need next. The reactor had almost been stabilized, but the real challenge was coming, and he knew it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the vent stopped leaking. Temperature readings returned to normal. The alarms quieted down, but Mark didn't relax. He knew this was just the first warning. The station had survived this round, but another problem could erupt at any moment. He crawled back from the vent, Lila following closely. Engineers stared at him, awe and confusion mixing on their faces. Did he just fix the reactor? One whispered. Mark simply shrugged, pushing his cleaning cart forward, his calm demeanor unchanged. "Just a small problem, nothing serious," he said softly, though his mind already anticipated the next danger. In the silence that followed, a subtle tension remained, a hint that the station was fragile, and the quiet cleaner, the underestimated single dad, had just shown everyone that heroes could be hidden in plain sight. And in that moment, Mark realized that this was only the beginning, the first warning, the calm before a storm that would test everything he knew. The station had returned to a tense quiet after the first warning, red lights dimming, alarms fading, engineers whispering in disbelief at the calm figure of Mark, the single dad cleaner, who pushed his cart as if nothing had happened. But inside him, every nerve was alert. He knew this was not over. The reactor had almost been stable. But tiny anomalies still lingered, waiting for a mistake to grow into disaster. Mark adjusted his gloves and glanced at Lila, who clung to his side, her eyes wide with admiration and worry. She had never seen her father like this before, so focused, so calm, so in control. "Daddy, what happens next?" she asked softly, her small voice echoing in the metallic corridor. He crouched down to her level, his voice steady. "Next, we watch carefully, Lila. We fix what others cannot. Sometimes people see a problem, but they don't know how to solve." That's where I step in," he whispered, already scanning the surroundings. Looking for subtle signs of danger, his attention returned to the reactor control panel. A series of blinking lights caught his eye, more subtle than the earlier alarms. Tiny fluctuations in the energy core, patterns no one else would notice. Engineers were busy with their standard procedures, following protocols. But protocols would not stop a reactor if it decided to fail. Mark's mind flashed back to his past, a life he rarely spoke about before Lila was born. He had trained as an engineer on some of the most dangerous stations in the galaxy. He had worked on reactors, weapon systems, and high-risk machinery. But he had left that life behind, choosing safety and simplicity for his daughter. A quiet existence cleaning floors and pipes. Nobody ever guessed he had handled situations far more deadly than this. Now, though, he had to rely on every skill he had buried deep. The reactor's readings told him a story. The crack in the vent was only the beginning. A cascade of small issues had formed. Pressure leaks in adjacent pipes, minor insulation failures, and even a small software glitch in the automated cooling system. Together, these could spiral into a massive explosion if left unchecked. Mark moved to a small maintenance drone, stored near the vent, a device that few dared to operate. He had modified it himself, equipping it with stabilizing clamps and a micro-welding tool. He activated the drone with a small remote, his fingers moving fast, precise, and calm. The engineers noticed. One of them gasped, "Is he using the drone?" "That's restricted equipment." Mark ignored them, guiding the drone through narrow vents, small lights illuminating the tiny fractures, sparks dancing along the metal seams, the machine's sensors feeding him real-time readings. He adjusted the clamps to secure loose panels, welding small cracks shut before they could spread further. His hands moved instinctively, guided by years of experience. Lila watched in amazement. "Daddy, you're amazing," she whispered, her small voice trembling with excitement and fear. Mark smiled faintly, but he didn't stop. "We have to be fast, Lila. The station depends on it," he said calmly, his eyes scanning every reading, every gauge, every subtle vibration in the metal around him. Suddenly, a warning light flashed on the drone screen, a pressure spike in a secondary vent, this one hidden behind a maintenance hatch. Engineers had never noticed it. Protocols would have ignored it, but Mark saw it instantly. He directed the drone to the hatch, maneuvering it carefully through the tight spaces, the machine's micro-tools securing bolts and reinforcing panels. Above, in the control room, engineers stared, their mouths open in disbelief. One whispered, He's doing what we can't even imagine," Mark continued, moving the drone to the next critical spot, a small fissure running along a coolant pipe, tiny droplets forming on its surface. If this pipe failed, the reactor core could overheat. In seconds, he activated a rapid cooling spray from the drone, carefully calibrating the temperature so it wouldn't shock the metal and worsen the crack. A spark flew unexpectedly from a nearby console, startling Lila, but Mark remained calm, moving his hand to shield her while keeping the drone steady. The vibrations threatened to knock it off balance, but his steady control ensured every tool performed perfectly. Mark's mind raced, calculating the chain reaction possibilities, imagining each pipe, vent, and wire as a part of a delicate system. One mistake could trigger a meltdown. One wrong move and the station could be destroyed. Yet he worked faster than anyone could follow. Calm, precise, unstoppable. He reached a particularly tricky spot, a vent junction with multiple stress fractures, too dangerous for humans to fix directly. The drone was the only solution, but it required delicate balancing, careful adjustments, and split-second timing. Mark guided it inch by inch, using his training, his instincts, and his patience. Engineers could only watch, helpless and amazed. Whispers filled the control room. "Is he a robot?" One said jokingly, but the truth was, nobody could match his combination of skill, experience, and calm under pressure. Finally, the last small vent was secured. The drone's lights dimmed as it completed its task. Mark retrieved it, inspecting every panel with his hands, making final adjustments. The reactor readings stabilized slowly. Alarm ceased. The hum of machinery returned to normal. But Mark didn't relax completely. He knew there were always hidden threats in the station. Silent dangers waiting for the slightest negligence. Layla hugged his leg. "Daddy, you saved everyone," she whispered, eyes shining. Mark knelt to her level. "We saved them together, Lila. We just noticed what others didn't," he said. A small smile breaking his calm exterior. The engineers approached hesitantly, awe and respect clear in their expressions. "Mark, how did you?" one asked, still unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. Mark shrugged. "Just paying attention, doing my job," he said simply, though. The truth was deeper. He had used every skill, every memory, every instinct from a lifetime of hidden training. To protect the station, protect his daughter, and protect everyone else. For the first time, people realized the quiet cleaner was not just a simple man with a mop. He was a hero hidden in plain sight. Someone who could think faster, act smarter, and solve problems that others couldn't even begin to understand. As Mark pushed his cleaning cart down the corridor, Lila skipping alongside him. Whispers followed, people staring in disbelief. He remained humble, focused, already scanning for the next anomaly, the next hidden danger, knowing that on a space station, peace was temporary and vigilance was eternal. And deep inside, Mark knew that this was only the beginning. The hidden skills he had kept secret were about to be tested again, in ways no one could predict. The quiet cleaner, underestimated by all, was now becoming the station's silent protector. The station had regained a fragile calm after the drone's work. Yet Mark knew better than anyone that calm was an illusion. Small anomalies lingered, pressure waves subtly shifted and hidden. Cracks whispered of disaster waiting to strike. The hum of machinery was steady, but the reactor's core still held tension. An invisible countdown ticking toward danger. Mark walked down the corridor, Lila beside him, clutching his hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. "Daddy, are we really safe?" she asked softly, her voice almost drowned by the faint hum of the reactor. Mark crouched to her level, his calm eyes meeting hers. "We're safe for now, Lila, but we have to stay alert. Things can change in seconds on a station like this," he said, his voice steady, almost reassuring. But inside him, he felt the weight of urgency. He approached the secondary control panel, one that monitored pressure valves deep within the reactor chamber, a critical system often overlooked by engineers who trusted the automation too much. Mark tapped a few buttons, scanning the readings, his eyes narrowing as he noticed a subtle spike in one of the temperature sensors. The spike was small, almost invisible, but Mark recognized the pattern immediately. He had seen it in his past life countless times, a precursor to a sudden reactor overload. One small error could cascade into a meltdown, and seconds would decide the fate of the entire station. Meanwhile, engineers were busy analyzing their consoles, still recovering from the awe of Mark's previous work. None of them noticed the tiny fluctuations. Some even whispered, "The cleaner did the impossible. Maybe he's overreacting now." But Mark ignored them. He didn't need validation. He only needed precision. He tapped into the maintenance drones again, deploying 2 simultaneously this time, one for the cooling pipes, one for the pressure valves, maneuvering them through the cramped shafts with skill born of years of hidden engineering knowledge. Each movement was calculated, each adjustment deliberate. Suddenly, a louder alarm blared, red lights flashing violently across the station. The core temperature had begun rising sharply. A critical valve had jammed, one that automated systems could not release. Engineers panicked, some pressing buttons randomly, some shouting instructions. But no one dared approach the valve directly. The radiation shielding made it too dangerous. Mark's eyes narrowed, analyzing the problem in an instant. That valve. It must be released manually. The drones can't reach it fully, he muttered to himself. Already plotting his next move, Lila tugged at his sleeve, eyes wide with fear. "Daddy." "It's scary again," she whispered, voice trembling. Mark knelt and smiled faintly. "Stay close, Lila. We're going to fix this." "Trust me," he said, his calm demeanor masking the adrenaline racing through his veins. He knew the station had only a few minutes before the valve failure could trigger a catastrophic meltdown. He approached the maintenance shaft leading to the valve, a narrow, twisting metal corridor barely wide enough for a single person. Warning. Lights flashing along its walls, sparks occasionally leaping from damaged panels. The smell of hot metal sharp in his nose. Mark crawled in, Lila following hesitantly, her small body pressed close to his side. She trusted him completely, knowing he had already saved them once, the small light on his helmet cutting through the darkness, shadows dancing along the walls. Every step filled with tension, every second critical. As he reached the valve chamber, Mark assessed the situation quickly. The valve was jammed. A misalignment in the locking mechanism preventing automated release, if not fixed immediately. Pressure would spike, coolant would fail, and the reactor would explode in seconds. He placed his gloved hands on the valve, feeling the heat through the metal, analyzing the alignment, calculating the precise angle and force required to release it safely. One wrong move and the jam could worsen, or worse. A sudden burst of pressure could injure him. Above, the station shuddered, alarms blaring, engineers shouting useless instructions. The countdown in Mark's mind, racing faster than any display, he whispered to himself, "Just focus. One move at a time, precise." With steady hands, he inserted a small manual override tool, a device he had carried for emergencies. Carefully rotating it to realign the locking pins, the metal groaned, sparks flying slightly, heat radiating toward him, but he remained calm, each motion deliberate, almost surgical. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The reactor core's temperature climbing dangerously, Mark's focus absolute, adjusting the tool with millimeter precision, the jam slowly releasing, a hiss of escaping pressure echoing through the chamber, the tension almost unbearable. Finally, the valve shifted fully, pressure released, coolant flow restored. The core temperature began to drop, alarms quieted slightly, red lights dimming, engineers breathing in relief, disbelief etched across their faces. One whispered, "I can't believe he did it again." Mark exhaled slowly, removing his gloves, but his calm was only surface deep. He knew the station was not safe yet. The reactor had stabilized temporarily, but the cause of the anomaly had not been fully traced. Hidden cracks and stresses remained. Waiting for the next trigger, he crawled back toward Lila, who had stayed close the entire time, her small hand gripping his tightly. "Daddy, you're a hero," she said softly, eyes wide. Mark crouched and brushed her hair back. "We just did what had to be done, Lila. Heroes are just people who notice what others don't and act when others hesitate," he said, pushing the thought of exhaustion aside, already scanning the station for new anomalies. In the control room, engineers finally began to pay attention, watching in awe as Mark demonstrated calm, precision, and instinct under unimaginable pressure. They realized the quiet cleaner, underestimated and overlooked, had just saved the station from imminent disaster. But Mark knew better than to relax completely. This was only the beginning, a warning, a test. The real threat was still out there, waiting, and next time, the challenge would be even greater. The reactor's secrets deeper, the danger more extreme. The station seemed to hold its breath, tension lingering like a fog, shadows stretching along the metallic walls, the hum of machinery, almost a whisper, and Mark, calm yet alert, the quiet, cleaner. The single dad, underestimated by all, was ready to face the next impossible challenge. Because on Orbitus 9, time was always running out, and heroes were the ones who acted when the rest froze in fear. The alarms had stopped temporarily, but the station was far from safe. Mark knew the reactor still held hidden dangers. Tiny fissures in pipes, overheating panels, and unstable conduits that could trigger disaster at any second. The station trembled faintly as if warning him. The hum of machinery felt sharper, more urgent. He checked the main display near the core. A critical valve deep within the restricted maintenance shaft was malfunctioning. Automated drones could not reach it. Engineers could not approach it without risking lethal radiation exposure, and every second wasted increased the chance of a catastrophic meltdown. Mark's jaw tightened, his mind racing with possibilities. There's only one way, he muttered under his breath, scanning the narrow shaft that led to the valve. Twisted metal corridors, sharp edges, and flickering lights, making it almost impossible for a human to pass. Even fully suited and shielded, Lila tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy?" "It's dangerous," she whispered, her small voice trembling, eyes wide with fear. Mark crouched beside her, brushing her hair back. "I know, Lila, but we have no choice. The station needs someone to act, and that someone has to be me." He said calmly, his voice firm, masking the adrenaline surging through him. He secured his suit, helmet locked, gloves tightened, and carefully adjusted the compact tools he carried, all engineered for this exact type of emergency. He activated a small emergency lighting panel on his helmet, the shaft ahead barely visible, shadows dancing along twisted metal walls, sparks flickering unpredictably. Engineers watched from a safe distance, their faces pale, unsure whether to intervene. The radiation shields blocked direct observation. Only cameras relayed faint images of Mark's movements. Some whispered, "He can't survive this. It's impossible." Others remained silent, awe etched across their expressions. Mark entered the shaft, crawling slowly, each movement precise, feet braced against walls, hands gripping support rails, navigating twists and turns with careful calculation. The heat from nearby machinery pressed against his suit. Vibrations ran along the metal floor, a reminder of how fragile his path was. Every second stretched, the station groaning. A spark shower from a damaged panel nearby threatened to scorch him, but he adjusted, using his tool to shield the edge of the suit, inching forward, muscles straining, sweat forming behind his helmet, heart pounding. Halfway through the shaft, a sudden vibration caused a loose panel to shift, brushing against Mark's arm, triggering a minor electric spark. He froze, knowing one wrong move could short-circuit the suit or push him off balance. But he recalibrated instantly, gripping the wall, and continued, his focus absolute. Ahead, the jammed valve came into view, glowing faintly under his helmet light. The problem clear. A misaligned locking mechanism combined with heat distortion had fused the metal. No drone could separate it. No remote tool could reach it fully. Only direct human action could succeed. Mark exhaled slowly, adjusting his gloves, reaching for the micro-welding kit, and carefully cutting away fused metal, sparks flying dangerously close, heat radiating toward him. He worked with delicate precision, knowing that one miscalculation could ruin everything. The reactor's core temperature rose steadily, alarms in the control room flashing again. Engineers shouting numbers, pressing buttons, but all efforts were secondary. All eyes were on the impossible move Mark was performing in silence. Unseen, alone, a sudden tremor shook the station. A nearby pipe twisted dangerously, spraying steam. Mark shielded his face instinctively, the hiss of hot vapor filling the narrow shaft, the suit's protective layer barely holding against the heat, the timer in his mind racing faster. He had only moments before pressure would spike beyond safe limits. He positioned himself directly over the valve, feeling the misalignment with gloved fingers, calculating exact angles, precise force, and timing to release it safely. His previous experience in high-risk engineering came alive. Instincts guiding hands faster than conscious thought. With a careful push and a slight rotation of the tool, metal groaned, sparks flying, heat crackling. The valve began to shift, stuck pins sliding free. His heart pounded, sweat stinging his eyes, every second a gamble against disaster. Above, cameras captured the tense moment. Engineers unable to believe what they were seeing. "He's doing the impossible." "He's actually doing it," one whispered, trembling. Mark adjusted his weight, pushing against the shaft walls, rotating the valve slowly, steadily, his muscles screaming from the strain. Each fraction of movement measured, controlled, deliberate. A misstep would trap him in the shaft or worsen the jam. Finally, the valve shifted completely, releasing pressure with a hiss of steam. Coolant flow restored. The core temperature readings began to drop. Alarms slowly quieted. Red warning lights dimming. Engineers exhaling in relief. Disbelief and awe etched across their faces. Mark didn't relax immediately. He carefully checked surrounding pipes, vents, and conduits, ensuring nothing else threatened the reactor. Every inch of the shaft scanned, small cracks reinforced with tools, every adjustment deliberate, precise, avoiding further risk. When he finally crawled back, Lila ran toward him, eyes wide. "Daddy, you did it," she exclaimed, hugging him tightly, tears in her eyes. Mark knelt and hugged her back. "We did it together, Lila. We just noticed what others couldn't, and acted when no one else could," he said softly, still catching his breath, his body aching from the impossible maneuver. Engineers approached cautiously. Awe and respect clear. One said, "Mark, we didn't think anyone could survive that, let alone fix it." Mark smiled faintly, shaking his head. "It's just paying attention, knowing what to do, and not giving up," he said simply, humility in his tone, though every eye in the room acknowledged that they had just witnessed something beyond ordinary human skill. The station settled into a tense calm once more. Reactor stable, valves functioning, coolant flowing. Yet Mark knew this was only temporary. Hidden dangers still lingered, fissures too small to notice, micro cracks that could expand if ignored. He remained vigilant, already scanning his surroundings. And as Lila held his hand, proud and amazed, Mark realized something important. Heroes were not born from recognition or praise. They were born from moments when courage, skill, and determination met impossible odds. And today, the quiet cleaner, the underestimated single dad, had become that hero. But the station still had challenges ahead, deeper threats waiting in shadows. And Mark knew his work was far from done. The impossible move had saved them today. But tomorrow, the real test would arrive. Testing not just skill, but ingenuity, courage, and the strength of the human spirit. And deep inside, he was ready, because heroes were not defined by what they were called, but by what they did when everyone else froze in fear. The reactor had finally stabilized, coolant flowing steadily, temperature readings back to normal, but the atmosphere aboard Orbitus 9 was electric, tension lingering in every corridor. Engineers whispered in awe. Officers glanced at one another in disbelief. And the once overlooked cleaner walked calmly through the station. Pushing his cart as if nothing extraordinary had happened, Mark's face remained calm, his eyes scanning the panels, checking readings, quietly noting small anomalies that still needed attention. But even he could feel the shift in the station's energy. Something had changed. People looked at him differently now, respect mixed with astonishment in their expressions. In the control room, senior engineers and commanders gathered, watching monitors, replaying camera feeds from the maintenance shaft. The drones and the reactor panels, they could hardly believe what they had seen. A single man, a cleaner, navigating restricted maintenance areas, stabilizing a failing reactor with skill that rivaled the best engineers. Commander Harlan, a tall man with a stern face and decades of experience, finally spoke, his voice steady but edged with awe. "Mark, you just prevented a catastrophic meltdown that could have destroyed half this station, saved countless lives, and stabilized the reactor in a way we thought impossible," he said, eyes not leaving the monitor. Mark nodded politely, keeping his tone humble. "Just did what needed to be done, sir," he said softly, pushing the cleaning cart forward, though he could feel the weight of attention on him, whispers following his steps, eyes watching every move. Lila skipped beside him, holding his hand, proud and curious, her young eyes wide, noticing the subtle nods, the silent gestures of respect. "Daddy, they're all looking at you," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. Mark smiled faintly, crouching slightly to her level. "They are Lila. But it's not about attention. It's about responsibility, doing the right thing, even when no one notices," he said calmly, scanning a nearby console for minor readings that needed adjustments. Back in the control room, Commander Harlan motioned for the engineers to gather, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. "Everyone, take note," he said firmly. "We underestimated him. He is no ordinary cleaner." Mark demonstrated skill, courage, and ingenuity that none of us expected. A reminder that sometimes heroes come from the most unlikely places. Some engineers nodded quietly, still stunned. Others whispered excitedly, comparing notes on how he had operated the drones, adjusted the valves, and navigated the restricted maintenance shaft. Nobody had expected him to accomplish what he had. And yet, there he was, calm, focused, and entirely unassuming. Mark continued his rounds, checking minor pressure panels, tightening loose connections, fixing small leaks that might have been overlooked, his mind already thinking about the next potential issues. The engineers began to shadow him cautiously, asking questions, taking notes, trying to understand how he had done it all so quickly and accurately. A young engineer finally approached, voice hesitant but curious. "Mark, can you show us how you stabilized the secondary vent? We want to learn. We need to know." Mark nodded simply. "Follow me, I'll explain the basics. But remember, it's not just about tools. You need attention, timing, and calm under pressure," he said, leading a small group through the maintenance corridors, showing them what adjustments he had made, explaining the rationale behind every move in simple terms. As he spoke, more crew members gathered quietly, listening intently, taking mental notes, impressed not just by his knowledge, but by his ability to remain calm under extreme stress. Lila followed closely, watching her father with pride, noticing how people treated him differently now. Suddenly, a new alert flashed on the main display, a minor anomaly in the outer reactor chamber. Nothing critical, but enough to remind everyone that safety was never guaranteed on Orbitus 9. Mark immediately stepped forward, checking the readings, adjusting a pressure valve remotely, preventing any escalation. The engineers whispered again. Amazed at his reflexes, Commander Harlan nodded approvingly. "He doesn't just fix problems, he anticipates them, sees what we cannot, and acts before disaster can strike," he said, finally giving Mark the recognition he deserved. Though Mark remained calm, almost indifferent, focused only on keeping the station safe. In the corridors, whispers grew louder, crew members nodding as they passed him, subtle gestures of respect and acknowledgement. The station's atmosphere shifting, no longer dismissive, no longer casual about the quiet cleaner. Now everyone knew the truth. Heroes could be anyone, and Mark had proven it. Lila tugged at his sleeve, eyes bright. "Daddy, everyone thinks you're amazing now," she said, beaming. Mark smiled faintly, crouching to her level. "It's not about what they think, Lila. It's about what we do, being ready when others freeze, noticing what others miss, and acting when it matters most," he said, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. Meanwhile, engineers continued their discussions, debating how they could prevent similar emergencies in the future, all the while recognizing that their previous assumptions had been flawed, that someone overlooked and underestimated could possess extraordinary skill and courage. Mark moved quietly through the corridors, finishing his rounds, ensuring that no minor issue had been ignored. Small leaks fixed, panels tightened, pressure readings double-checked, while engineers followed, learning, observing, and realizing that knowledge alone was not enough without calm judgment and courage under pressure. Commander Harlan approached him as he prepared to leave the maintenance area. "Mark, we owe you a debt, not just for saving the station, but for reminding us what humans are capable of, even when underestimated," he said sincerely. Mark nodded simply. "Just doing my duty, sir. Protecting the station, protecting everyone here," he said softly, humble as always, though deep down he understood the respect he had earned would follow him for the rest of his life on this station. As the station slowly returned to normal, crew members quietly repaired minor damages, recalibrated equipment, and reviewed emergency protocols. Yet one thing had changed forever. Mark, the quiet cleaner, the single dad, had shown that courage, skill, and humanity could turn the most ordinary person into the most extraordinary hero. And as he walked down the corridor with Lila skipping beside him, shadows stretching from the blinking lights, the hum of machinery steady again, he knew that while today had been a victory, tomorrow would bring new challenges, deeper dangers, and tests that required not just skill, but intuition, bravery, and the unshakable heart of a hero. For in the galaxy, true recognition came not from titles or ranks, but from the courage to act when the odds were impossible. And Mark, the underestimated cleaner, had become a living example, a hero recognized, respected, and ready for whatever lay ahead. The station had returned to a fragile peace. But Mark knew better. Orbitus 9 was a living, breathing structure of metal and energy, full of hidden dangers and secrets that could erupt at any moment. Crew members whispered in awe about what the quiet cleaner had done, but Mark pushed his cart down the corridors with calm determination, his mind already anticipating the next anomaly. Lila ran beside him, her small voice bright and excited. "Daddy, everyone knows now. They all respect you." Mark smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "It's not about respect, Lila. It's about being ready when no one else is, noticing what others miss, acting when it matters most," he said calmly, scanning the panels lining the corridor. Suddenly, the main station monitors flickered. A signal from the outer perimeter appeared. An unexpected energy spike from a nearby asteroid belt. The alarms were silent at first, subtle, almost easy to miss, but Mark's eyes narrowed, intuition telling him that this could be more than just a sensor glitch. Commander Harlan appeared, concern etched on his face. "Mark, we are receiving unusual readings from the perimeter. Could be an asteroid collision or something else," he said, uncertainty in his voice. Mark didn't hesitate. "Show me," he said firmly, already moving toward the observation deck, Lila following closely, her small hand clutching his. The observation deck's glass panels revealed a shimmering mass of debris, asteroid fragments colliding, but there was something more, A faint, controlled energy signature moving among the debris. Not natural, deliberate, intelligent. Engineers gasped. It's some kind of alien. Ship? One whispered, eyes wide with fear. Mark's mind raced, calculating possibilities. If it's hostile, the station could be in danger. We have minutes to prepare, he said, moving to the perimeter control panel, tapping codes, running simulations, plotting trajectories, the calm efficiency of a man who had faced death before evident in his every move. Commander Harlan nodded, trusting him implicitly. Mark, you lead? Everyone else follow your guidance, he said, stepping back, knowing the man who had saved the station once could do it again. Mark activated defensive shields around the station, rerouted power to stabilizing reactors, and instructed engineers to monitor the hull integrity, all while scanning the incoming energy signature, observing patterns, predicting movements, and calculating risks. The alien ship approached, its energy beams firing near asteroids. Moving methodically as if scanning for weaknesses, the station trembled slightly with each near impact, alarms blaring, crew members frozen with fear, yet Mark remained calm, voice clear and precise as he directed actions. Divert power to the front shields, recalibrate the venting systems, and engage microthrusters to adjust orbits slightly, he instructed, moving from console to console, his fingers flying over holographic panels, each adjustment critical, each second a gamble. Lila watched in awe. Daddy, you're like a superhero, she whispered, eyes wide. Mark crouched slightly, brushing her hair back. Stay close, Leela. Watch carefully. This is why we pay attention. This is why courage matters, he said, focusing on calculations, predicting the alien ship's movement, and analyzing weak points in its approach pattern. The ship changed trajectory, aiming directly at a section of the station that contained critical power conduits. The crew panicked, some running to safety, others shouting for action. But Mark's voice cut through the chaos, calm, commanding, precise. Engineers, focus on the venting system here. Reinforce the secondary conduits. Activate energy dampeners. We have seconds. He shouted, guiding every movement, every adjustment, every second-saving measure. Leela held his hand tightly, watching him move. With incredible precision, every instinct honed from years of hidden training and life experience. The station's systems responded to his guidance. Shields reinforced, conduits stabilized, vents released pressure, and the alien ship's energy beams bounced harmlessly off the reinforced hull. The crew stared, disbelief mixed with awe, as Mark's calm direction prevented what could have been a catastrophic breach. The alien ship adjusted its pattern, testing defenses, but Mark anticipated each move, redirecting power, adjusting shields, manipulating thrusters, all faster than any automated system could. Finally, the alien ship retreated, energy signature fading among the asteroid field, the station stable, the crew exhaling in relief. Whispers filling the corridors. It's incredible? He did it again. Commander Harlan approached Mark, face serious, but eyes filled with respect. Mark, you've saved the station from not one, but two disasters. Humanity has just been shown at its best through one person's courage, skill, and determination, he said solemnly. Mark nodded, a small smile breaking his calm exterior. We just did what needed to be done, sir, he said simply, humility evident, though the crew now understood the magnitude of his actions. Lila ran ahead, excitement shining in her eyes. Daddy, everyone knows now. You're a hero, she shouted, laughter in her voice, echoing through the station corridors. Mark crouched to her level. Not about recognition, Lila, but sometimes people see the truth, and they remember courage matters, and when humans act together, nothing is impossible, he said, voice calm but firm. In the corridors, Whispers turned to admiration. Crew members nodding, some offering quiet congratulations, others simply staring in awe. Engineers discussing how a single man had prevented disasters no one else could manage. The story of Mark, the quiet cleaner, the underestimated single dad, spread throughout Orbitus 9, his courage and ingenuity now a legend, inspiring others, proving that humanity, even in its most ordinary forms, could achieve greatness against impossible odds. Mark returned to his routine quietly, checking minor panels, securing loose conduits, adjusting vents, his focus never wavering, Lila skipping beside him, proud, excited, and full of admiration. Above, on distant observation stations, reports began to circulate, news of the human who saved an entire station from disaster reaching other colonies, other civilizations, the story of ingenuity, courage, and heart spreading beyond Orbitus 9. Mark paused, looking out a window at the stars, Lila holding his hand, reflecting on what had just occurred, a quiet smile on his face, knowing that humanity had been shown at its best, in the unlikeliest of heroes, and deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, dangers were endless, but one truth remained clear. When humans acted with courage, intelligence, and heart, nothing could stop them. Orbitus 9 was safe, heroes had been recognized, and the legend of Mark, the quiet cleaner who became a savior, would echo across the stars, a testament to the power of human spirit, the essence of HFY, humanity, at its finest,